Unfiltered, the 400th episode. I'm your host, Blain, and I'm joined by my co-host, Trege Wilson.
Hello.
So 400 episodes, that's a pretty big deal
Yeah,
for us.
yeah. It's 390 more than I thought we'd get to.
It's true. Especially after we started off as a bi-monthly show. Like we'd start 2 a month.
Yeah, and then we were limited on what we could talk about or say or, you know,
Very
who to
unfiltered.
chirp on. Very unfiltered. Habs unfiltered, but not really.
Yeah. But now we are. We can talk about whatever the hell we want.
Yeah.
And right now I want to talk about Matt, how much we miss him and wish he was here.
Is Matt even alive?
I think I've seen pictures of him on the savannah in Africa
Is
on a
is Matt
safari.
like is Matt like is this gonna be like the new Elvis? Is he dead or is he alive
He's our Waldo.
and hiding?
If anyone out there is listening and you've seen Matt Smith, let us know where he is. Tag us, tag the show. Maybe we can go find him. We'll send a search party.
I've seen tweets. He's tweeted. I've seen him send
Yes.
tweets out.
Is it him or is it someone else who's kidnapped him?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he was kidnapped. I don't know. Maybe,
Maybe.
maybe he went past the ice wall and found the countries beyond and
It's a
just trying to get
secret.
back.
All right. So yeah, 400 episodes. It's this is our 7th season. We've I'm I'm really pleased with the way everybody's taken us in and uh, interacted with us over these years. And for this episode, being one of my last ones before maybe even my last one before I take off for the rest of the year, um, I want to talk a little bit about what the Canadiens are going through right now, namely Martin St. Louis and his return, uh, their recent play, the kids, and some other stuff. So why don't we just start it off right off the top with Martin St. Louis' a departure and then his return. So he departed. Nobody knew exactly what it was right off the top. He went back to Connecticut to deal with a family issue. His son was hurt. Yeah, and that's exactly what a father should do. But what I found disconcerting was that there was all these clickbait sites and trying to create rumors and all kinds of bullshit and not leaving this poor guy alone to deal with his family.
Yeah, Facebook was full of them on the a lot of the Habs. You know, Marty St. Louis is leaving because he's disgusted with this or blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
The very day he left, David Savard kind of let it slip what the reason was during an interview because he said we're going to try to win this one for his son. Then speculation went to see what it wasn't. I didn't find it too bad. Surprisingly, Twitter was probably the least one that had the least amount of crap about what was going on with Martin St. Louis, which is kind of surprising because Twitter usually
Ironic, really.
has the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and it was really no one's business. No one needed to know. He had to go to deal with family things, and you know what? It's I'm fine with that. I'm glad with the way they handled it. Montreal media handled it. The assistant coach there, he said, "Hey, you know, like he's not here, but talk with him every day. Yada yada yada. We're gonna go as normal. Blah 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 blah." And then, yeah, so that was that. And then it turns out his son. This was actually he injured himself earlier, and then there was some kind of reaction to his injury. Didn't really get into detail. I can only assume maybe he got infected or something like that, and then he had to go into the hospital. And then, but once he was stable and at home, and they felt it was safe for him to come back. He came back. So he missed what 3 games? I think he missed. So
Yeah, a couple games. And the important thing is the son's now home and he's doing a lot
yeah,
better. And that meant that St. Louis can come back. Now, I was very impressed with the way the mainstream media reacted. They kind of let it be. They mentioned he wasn't there and then left it at that. The
yeah,
hockey community as a whole treated this with dignity and respect, which is exactly what St. Louis has earned. And again, these clickbait sites really ticked me off with the way they did this. Just leave the poor bastard alone. He's going through enough.
And another thing, just don't click on clickbait sites. They're very easy to see because usually they have, oh, Montreal is going to make a trade for this player after the trade deadline, and the player they name, the pitcher isn't even the same person. So, it's, someplace in India or Mumbai or somewhere just making up a site so you can go there and then get all kinds of spyware and shit on your computer. So,
and that's exactly what those sites are for.
Yeah. So, but not the hockey writers.
No, that's true. But what this did was it kind of showed the impact that he has had on this team and his value to this team. They respect him. He's truly part of the team. So when he was gone, you saw them dip a little bit. And then on his return,
played well. Yeah, they dipped. They played well, except the Vancouver game. That whole road trip was pretty good. But yeah, you could see that he's kind of a glue that holds the team together, I guess you could say. Does that sound about right?
Kind of. Yeah, he's like the dad. Everyone wants to play good for dad. And when he came back in Colorado, that might have been their best game of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, a 5-2 loss to Calgary and then a 4-1 loss to Vancouver. But I mean, the Edmonton game lost in overtime. He came back. Then they destroyed the Kraken. And then he came back in Colorado. That was probably, their best game of the season. Like that was a really good game. And then, of course, another good game against the another okay game, I guess, against the Flyers. I don't think they played exceptionally well, but they played well enough to get the win.
They did. And when they're playing the Flyers, I mean, I expected more out of Tortorella and the Flyers in that game. Philly's looking for a playoff spot. They're pushing for it, at least they're competing for it. They had something to prove in that game, and then they were, I don't know, they just came out flat. I mean, they did have a couple of goals turned back by video replay, which is kind of Habs fans understand what that feels like because it happens almost all the friggin' time. I'm not a fan of the offside one, but the one where the guy was kicking, I mean, you could have called it for goalie interference, kicking motion, a number of things. So yeah, I can see that one. But
there's an argument with the offside whether if you're that close, do we really need to call it offside or something like that? I don't know how to fix the offside thing without getting rid of it altogether, which I don't think is smart either.
No, it's not a good solution either way.
Because if you do that, you just have someone like Mike Huffman or Phil Kessel get his job back because then he can just stand over there by the goalie and be like, okay, I'll stand here and they'll just play 4-on-4 at the other end. And really, that's what it'll end up being. I mean, I played lacrosse all my life and there's no offside lacrosse. And a lot of, basically once you get the ball back, you have a guy up the floor. And I mean, their defense offense changes are totally different. But I just don't see that working in hockey. You're just going to find teams that have a really talented forward who doesn't play really good on defense. He's just going to sit up around the red line the entire game.
Hitchcock.
I wasn't going to say it because people already hate me for my views on Mitchkov. They forget the fact I think he's a hell of a player. I just don't think he's as great as people think he is. So a guy like Mitchkov or Phil Kessel pretty much did that his whole career. But he hung around the blue line instead of hanging around the red line. And so now you're just going to have guys basically no offside. You just have a guy hanging around the hash marks at the other end of the ice, which will make the other team put a defenseman back there, and you basically have 4-on-4 hockey. Really, is what you have. So
essentially,
yeah. So I don't see that. So I don't know what they can do about that. I really don't. But
I don't know if there's anything you can do about that specific one. I think that one's fine. There's no perfect solution to anything, especially in a game like hockey, which is high speed, constant changes. So that ruling, that that rule isn't that bad. If they can sort out what the fuck goaltender interferences, that'd be great.
I gave up on that fight.
Uh,
It's never going to happen. I mean, it's simple to do. It's very, very simple. This space is the goalie space. If you're in the goalie space when a goal is scored, it's no goal. Not like it was back in the day when you had like a toe in the fucking. Like if you're in his space, it's no goal. End of conversation.
like the double IHF rules. I could live with that. I could live with that.
The NHL could learn from rules in the PWHL and the double IHF
Oh,
and improve the NHL tenfold. Like I love the PWHL with the shorthanded goal ins and power play. Fucking right. You know what I mean? That's an excellent rule. Like that team worked hard. They got that goal in the power play. There's a couple others. I have to look them up that PWHL has that I think should move over.
it makes for great hockey there. Yeah, they're
so
I watch that league and it is fun to watch. It's good. It's a good pace. It's very skilled, and those different rule changes really make a difference in the entertainment value.
yeah, and the same thing with DOPS and their suspension handout. It should be you do this crime, you get this fine. If you're doesn't matter if it was your first time or your 10th time. Boom, this is what you're getting. Boom, this is what you're getting.
Yeah.
Boom, this is what you're getting. Right? End of conversation. I don't know. It's just instead of making it perceptive, make it cut and dry. You know what I mean? Done.
Yeah. Now we're about to see a little bit more of DOPS and their handiwork as Caden Gooley he's been called onto the floor for, I think it's a phone interview, for his slash from the bench. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're on the bench and you reach out and hit a player on the ice, you deserve something. A heavy fine, a suspension of a game or so, great. But if they come back and they give Gooley upwards of 4 to 5 games when there's players getting cross-checked in the face and the perpetrator paying a $2,500 fine, like what the fuck are we doing?
Well, see, that's just it. Like Toronto fans will argue because of what Mike Riley did to for that empty net goal. Philly should have been pissed at Evans' empty net goal. How are you going to shoot the puck that hard into the empty net and get away with it? Toronto never would have let that happen. Toronto never would have let that happen. But I mean,
Armias.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Or who scored the empty net goal against Philly? The one that kind of
Armia and Evans.
Yeah, so it was kind of like this little slow Evans with the fourth goal, the little backhander slow roller that I thought defenseman was going to actually get to because it's going so slow. But whatever. But that's just it. Like any hit to the face with your stick, whether intentional or not, because you're supposed to have control of your stick at all times. If it's technically a high sticking penalty in the game, but you looks like it's almost deliberate, or Tom Wilson, he got 5 games for the one he did the other day.
Was it 5 or 6?
Something I don't know.
I think it was 6.
Tom,
I think it was 6.
If you go by history, he probably should have got 15. But then you got Trouba's one where they argue that the other player helped swing his stick or something. Doesn't matter. He should have had control of the stick. Should have been up there in the first place. It should have been more than $2,500 maximum allowed fine or whatever the hell stupid
some
thing
bullshit
that is. Like, what is that? Like, what's $2,500 going to? He probably walked in the dressing room, opened his wallet, and said, "Oh, here you go.
Yeah, I got some change from dinner."
Oh no, right? Yeah. So I think it should be more strict. If this is what you do, this is the crime. We don't care what the situation is. We don't care who you are. We don't care what your background is. If this is what you did, this is how many games you're getting. Right? Done. Yeah. You know, if this is what you did a second time, we'll double it. Boom, done. And then you'll see stuff like that go away.
Yeah. And in this case, as we record, it is Friday, the 29th of March, and it's 4:30 p.m. Atlantic time. The word hasn't come down yet as to what the result will be of the Gooley slash. I'm suspecting a game.
And
That's my
proper
expectation.
thing. There's no need for you to
Yeah,
reach out from the bench and
not
slash
from
at
the
someone.
bench.
Not from the
Not
bench.
from the
So
bench.
if he gets a game, he gets a game. If it's a fine, it's a fine. I don't see why it'd be more than 2 or 3 games, but you never
It's
know.
DOPS, and you never know.
You never know. You never know. Like I mean, with Gallagher, I actually thought his 5 games was a little bit lenient for what he did. So I would have been okay with more than that, but it is what it is.
Now, on the is still staying with the recent play with the team. The 3 game win streak, their first of the year, the first time all year they win 3 in a row, and now you go on to social media and it's just a wall of, oh my god, they're ruining everything. How could our team that we have been cheering for our whole lives win some games in an entertaining fashion and give us fun stuff to look at? How dare they?
We need to get as close to the bottom of the draft so we can get the best player, even though our GM is shitty at drafting players,
Except for when he isn't.
except for when they prove me wrong on the ice, and then I have to change my whole narrative.
And it's that wall of text is usually from the most vocal, filthy minded, filthy mouthed individuals who've been swearing and yelling up and down since they picked Reinbacher over Mitchkov. Like, it's just, they didn't pick my guy. I can't believe they did that.
I
And
mean,
now it's a full hate.
they didn't pick my guy either, but I'm not going to cry
Yeah.
and whine about it. I'm no Pierre Olivier Adrali who goes on friggin' Twitter and pretty much wants to throw a toaster in his friggin' bathtub every time Montreal Canadiens win a game. I mean,
Sweet
last
Jesus.
year, last year I could understand wanting to get closer to the top. I understood last year. Like I got it.
Yeah.
Like okay, yeah, you're right. If we don't pick top 5 or top 4, we're not going to get the guy we all thought the team needed. But I wouldn't be shocked if they even had the 3rd pick. I wouldn't have been shocked if they went with Reinbacher on the 3rd pick. I think I would have been a little bit more upset about it than I was
Yeah.
at 5 because I would have much preferred Carlson or Smith or. I mean, I wanted
Obviously.
Leonard, and Leonard went what 13 or something like that. But
No, he went a
no,
couple
he
of
went to
picks later. Right now,
Washington, didn't he?
Washington at 7,
Yeah,
8,
yeah, okay, 8.
something like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because
anyway,
Mitchkov went 7.
that's who I wanted. So,
Yeah.
I didn't get him. Oh well.
Yeah. And the same people that are pissed off about that pick, calling Hughes a horrible drafter, he can't pick the right guy. They want to get higher in the draft so that he can go and make a pick. If you don't trust him to make the right pick, why the hell do you care if they win or lose?
Was that I made that point earlier one time on Twitter, and all these same guys were like, "Well, you get the best chances." Yeah, but if you don't think he can pick the right pick, what difference does it make? Whether they have the best chances or not, what difference does it make? The only difference it makes if you get the first overall pick, and it is a worldwide consensus. This guy, like, if they got the first overall pick with Bedard available, if he doesn't pick Bedard, then you're like, okay, there's something wrong here,
This
right?
year with Celebrini,
Right in this year with Celebrini, but after Celebrini,
it's wide open.
it's wide open. It doesn't matter who you pick; you're going to get a good player. I mean, I wouldn't pick a defenseman if I was Montreal,
No,
unless it's a certain defenseman. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, they got to pick Paraka." Well, why? No, really, draft thing has very few drafts of Paraka in the top 5. Why is he
I've
the
seen
guy
a
that has to be
couple,
picked?
but yeah,
That's what I mean. Like very few. Um, Now, personally, I'm a Lindstrom Demidov fan. I want them to draft Lindstrom and Demidov. Now, if they're 6, which I think is where they're at right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're going to have Sarabini's gone, so you can forget about him.
Oh yeah.
He's gone at 1. But then you're going to have 3 or 4 defensemen between 1 and 6 being
So
drafted.
Demidov might be gone, might not be gone,
Lindstrom
probably
might
will
be
be,
gone,
but
might not be gone, but the odds of both of them being gone are pretty
yeah.
slim, right? I mean, it
And
could
even if
be it.
and even if they both are, you still have
Catton.
Berkeley Catton, you still have Cole Iserman,
Man, you still have a Ginlev. You want that? I think a Ginlev's a bit of a reach at 6, but
a huge
um,
reach, but yes. Yeah, he's available
You
too.
have that Finnish guy, Helenius. I think he's a
Kalanis,
center.
yeah, he would be a good
He,
pick there.
he's supposed to go. Some think he's going to go in the top 5, top 7. So you're still getting a good forward. This isn't a draft like the Galchenyuk draft when the whole first round was shitty, except Morgan Riley, right?
It's
No,
like
I'm
a cross check to
seriously.
the face when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, well, like I'm serious. Like you look at that whole first round. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
You look at that whole first round, and it wasn't a very good draft.
No, and this year's draft is looking solid. It looks like a good,
And
at
it's
least in
look
the
at
top 10.
you're not going. You have maybe one superstar, but then you have 3 or 4 guys that could be superstars. Like you don't have, like in the Bedard draft, you had Bedard, who was the elite guy who's going to change everything. Then you had guys, they're going to be superstars like Carlson and Smith and Fantelli, or they could be. They have the
Have that
pedigree.
potential.
They have that potential, and you understood why they went in the top 3 or 5. Um, but I mean, after those 3, I mean, even Smith, I don't know. But after that, it's really just shooting fish in a barrel. Like, just get what you get, and hopefully, and I mean, I know you have everyone comparing Mitchkoff or Reinbacher, but one's a defenseman, one's a forward, one's an offensive minded forward, one's a two-way hybrid defenseman. You can't compare them. They play 2 different styles of hockey. They do 2 different styles of things. You can't compare them. So if you're
And I
going to
would
try to
argue,
compare them, you're wasting time.
and I would argue that Reinbacher will have a more positive impact on the team winning games than
I agree.
Mitchkov would have had in Montreal.
I agree. And I think if you're looking at a playoff performer, someone to go in the playoffs, and really, I think Reinbacher is going to be more impactful in the playoffs, whether he scores or not. Um, I think Mitchkoff will get you out of your seat. I think Mitchkoff will be exciting to watch. I don't think Mitchkoff's going to win you a Stanley Cup.
Probably not. He's the kind of player that you add to a team that has all those playoff type guys, those bruisers, the big heavy guys who can play a heavy game, and he can kind of dart in and out. Now, Philly might have more of that than Montreal does, which
Yeah,
makes
well,
perfect sense
Philly.
why they take the chance.
I mean, Philly's a rebuilding team that's battling for a playoff spot right now, when no one expected them to. So I think a lot of has to do with Torts. But I'll be interested to see how Mitchkoff plays under Torts if he's there and when he
I don't
shows
think
up
he
in three
does.
years. I'm just saying they better come up with a good
I don't think he
excuse to.
will.
They better come up with a good excuse to fire
Yeah.
Torts if the team keeps playing the way they are. You
Now,
know what I'm saying? Like, because if
yeah.
Mitchcock doesn't play defense, he's not playing for Torts.
Now, the big talk on that is the whole Russian aspect, right? And they just got their Russian goalie back,
They did,
the one they drafted 10 years ago.
which they didn't think they'd get, and you
Yeah.
know, uh, and maybe Mitchkov will come over early. I mean, he's under contract, so it's probably not. But
Well, it took the Flyers arguing with the IIHF to get his contract revoked from the KHL because they proved that he had signed with them first. Now,
right,
you want to talk Russian factor? That's the shit that people are talking about with the Russian factor. It's not that, oh, they're Russian, they don't want to come, or the transfer agreements. No, no, no. The fact that in Russia right now, shit is so sideways, politically, economically, people are they're breaking rules and using connections to keep players. That's the Russian factor right now. And we saw it with this Russian goaltender who finally made it to North America, and I think he's going to be a good goaltender for them. But that's why a lot of teams were a little shy with Mitchkov, and it makes perfect sense.
I agree, and but the 3 year contract is why they're even more shy. Uh, I
True.
think, I mean, for instance, Demidov doesn't have a contract,
Well, I
so
think he's under contract for another year after this. I think.
maybe, but it's a very short. If it is, it's
Yeah.
only a 1 year. It's only a 1 year contract, or his contract's up at the end of this KHL season. I'm not sure. I mean, he's in the MHL, so it doesn't. I'm not sure how that works.
They'll
Um,
find a way.
yeah, but the point is, if you draft him, you can probably get him almost right away. The other issue with the Russian factor is development. Philly has
Mm.
no say in Mitchkov's development while over in Russia. And now we know from his parent club, SKA, was that a
Yeah,
CK?
St. Petersburg.
Yeah, anyway, they didn't like his defensive play. That's why he didn't stay on the team, and they sent him to Sochi because they didn't care how Sochi went. They only care how this team goes because that is the team they want
Yeah.
to win the Gregorian Cup. I'm not. I'm just that's what I'm speculating. I'm not saying I have any information on that, but I know the coach wasn't happy with Michkov. I don't think Michkov's a cancer like people say he is. I really don't.
No.
But I think it's just the fact that he doesn't want to play a two-way game. He just wants to do offense. And I think
Yeah.
that's going to hurt him in the NHL because the NHL wants look at what St. Louis did with Caulfield. Turned him into more of a two-way player
But
because
they're
that's how
shitting
you
on Caulfield because of that. He's not
and
scoring enough.
but that's how teams succeed with your top
True.
with all four lines being capable of playing a two-way game.
Now, we talked a little bit about that offense, and Caulfield being more complete, yes, but he's not scoring enough, and he's being crapped on for that. But I would point to the fact that he had that shoulder surgery, still building his confidence up on that, and by rounding out his game a little bit more, I think next year he'll be that much better, especially when there's more than just one frickin' line to check.
I think Caulfield can be a 50-goal scorer. I'm not going to ever back off from that. I suspected he'd be the 30-goal scorer this year, not Suzuki. However, how can you argue with a guy who now has 55 points? He's playing a better two-way game. He's forechecking better. He's back-checking better. I mean, he had 36 points in 46 games last year, including 26 goals. But now he's a setup guy. 35 assists in 72 games. Personally, I think Slafkovsky is the glue that holds that really brought that line together.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was
But
on
if you
pace for
think about it,
he was on pace for 64 points last year, and this year he's on pace for a little more than that, almost
66,
70.
67.
What the hell's going on here?
Please say 69. Please say 69.
63.
Ah,
So he's on pace for the exact
still.
same amount of points, but he looks like a more complete player because he doesn't have that Cy Young look to him. Because he would have had
True.
Jesus, he would have had 50 goals last year, I think, at his pace.
If you look at you say, okay, he's going to finish the season with 63
46.
points, and out of those 63 points, he gets 24 goals. That's bad. But if it was 63 points and it was 24 assists, that'd be amazing. Like,
Well, he last year he's on pace for 64 points, 46 goals.
Amazing. This year, horse shit. Terrible. Horrible at hockey.
1 point less, but he's only on pace for 23 goals.
Terrible.
Half of what he would have scored last one. But
not worth the money.
But there was 64 goals, 63 goals scored.
Yeah.
When he was on the ice. Or he helped score 63 goals one way or the other.
And I would argue that becoming a better playmaker will end up helping him in the future with his scoring because people have to respect his pass now and not just play defense on his shot.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of his scoring issue is his shoulder. I think his shot is off.
Sure.
I think his confidence might be a bit up, but I think there was and Marty St. Louis just said, okay, we're not going to worry about that. Let's work on all your other stuff this year. Let's not care about whether you score or not. Let's work on all your same thing they did with Slafkovsky. Slafkovsky at the first of the season worked on all the stuff he was having issues with the season before. Now that it's all come together, unless you're a Toronto fan who still thinks Slafkovsky going to be this huge bust because they're jealous because they don't have a prospect that's developing like he is.
Yeah, Matthew Knies, he's got like 9 points now, 10 points. He's amazing.
Playing with Matthews and Marner. Yeah, or he was playing with Matthews and Marner. Like that's what I find funny. You think I should probably get 10, 15 points playing Matthews and Marner. I can barely
Goalie
skate,
might.
right? Um,
But now
but I mean, I
you got a more complete Caulfield. You have Slavkovsky
um,
improving, and you have Suzuki,
Suzuki
who's showing he is a number one center.
center, right? So, like, I mean, Suzuki's on pace for 77 points this year. So, that's the most points the Montreal's had since Alexei Kovalev in one season.
Yeah. And I
So,
think
I
he's the
mean,
first center to score 30 goals in uh, what, about
Dan
30
Foose,
some odd years? I mean, unless you count Galchenyuk.
what is
Do you
he? He
count
wasn't really a cent.
Galchenyuk?
He wasn't really a center though, was he?
He kind of went in between, back and forth between
Yeah,
wing and center, but
I,
a,
I
a
guess you could
purely
count
established
Galchenyuk.
center, what, Duffus?
That's what I would say. Yeah. I mean, how they're going to have 3 60-point goals, 60-point scorers for the first time, and
8
oh
years,
man,
9 years.
this is kind of sad when you talk about it.
That's the
Really,
thing. Montreal hasn't
like
had a lot of offense over the last 30, 40
4
years.
decades. Yeah,
And now
this is
we've
really
got players who are starting to show some offense, and they're still being crapped on because they're not showing enough.
yeah.
Like, let's be a little bit more honest with their play here.
So the last 70-point scorer was Domi in 2018-19 with 72 points,
Yeah.
and he
And
was
he
the only
played
guy.
center that year.
And he was the only guy. Well, they have him listed as left wing here, but yeah, he played a lot of center. But he was the only guy over 60 points.
Yeah.
Like, and if I'm just going back here, like,
You have to go back to
yeah,
2009 for the next one.
I mean, Pacioretty had 67, still the only guy over 60 points. It's
It's not
yeah,
70,
no, it's not 70. Volcanic was the last. Oh,
but he scored 30 plus goals a year.
24, 2014, 15. Pacioretty, Plekanec, and Subban all had 60 points. 60 points or higher. Pacioretty had 67.
And I remember when Pacioretty was getting those points, he was he was being lambasted for not getting enough points, even though he was scoring 30 plus goals a year.
Yeah,
Now you have a forward, another winger who's being lambasted for getting a lot of points, but not enough goals. Like it's just not. It doesn't jive for me. It doesn't make sense. We should be looking at what they have right now. They're giving up some draft positions in overall. They're instead of being fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh, and in return they're getting steps forward in progression from Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky's made a massive jump. Then you've got Struble and Harris and Dooley and all these other players are picking up their games, are improving. Yeah, you're losing a spot or two on the draft, but which would you rather have? A complete shit team finishing dead last with no progression, or the young guys progressing a little bit?
you know what? I want to see, I would love to see how these guys would be if there was no injuries. Because if there was no injuries, we're not drafting in the top 10.
Exactly.
If you
Um,
have Doc, if you have Doc Newhook and maybe Slavkovsky on that second line, I mean, they played really well against Toronto and for 10 minutes against Chicago, but you don't really know how that line would have went, but they seem to have a lot of chemistry. So you have that line, then you have the Nick Caulfield, whoever would have fit in with them. I would argue Joshua Waugh if he would have been brought up at the same time he was brought up, but or you move Slavkovsky up and put Waugh on the second line. But if you have that team fairly healthy through the whole season, you're not finishing in the bottom 10. So how would these tank guys be then? Like
oh, they'd be
same
up
with
in arms. Up in
same with
arms.
last year, same with the year before. I don't think they're bottom 5 if they stay healthy.
And well, what were they like when the Canadiens made it to the Cup final? Bet they were pretty happy, even though that
Well,
team was not good enough to
they're
win the
pretty
cup.
happy, but they're pretty happy. But they didn't have very good analytic hockey players playing on their team when they
There's always something,
Victor.
right?
We need Victor Mete to save the day.
All
But
right, so we'll take a break
here's
on this one here,
okay.
and then we'll jump back into it after the commercial break as we're We're going to need to get paid our 5-6 cents a year. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get right back into this anti-tank playoff talk. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 400th episode of Habs Unfiltered. We're back from commercial break, and just before we left, Trege was about to go on a complete annihilation of this tank talk. We were talking a little bit about what this team would look like had nobody been injured. I agree with you. I think that this is a team that would probably be just out of the reach of the playoffs, but close to that last wild card spot.
I think they would have been similar to, I don't have the standings in front of me, but I think they would have been similar to maybe where Pittsburgh's at, only a little bit farther out. Like, I think now you would know they weren't going to make it, but, mathematically, you're like, oh, well, if they win 6 games in a row and everyone else loses 6, they're in the wild card spot or something like that. Last year, I think they would have been hovering around the 10th spot more than the 5th spot. And I just wonder, like, so what is it you want? Like, how many years do you have to tank and try to get that top pick before you're satisfied that we shouldn't tank anymore? Right. So when does it stop? So the way I see it is, I don't think Habs fans really know how a rebuild is supposed to work. They're going by past history from years ago when it wasn't as competitive as it is now. They're looking at it as the Chicagos and the LAs and the guys who went 10, 15 years without anywhere close to the playoffs, got all these good high draft picks, and then all of a sudden became a super team, or got lucky and got that, the Crosbys and the Ovechkins and the Taves and the Canes, and you know what I mean? They went on this or whatever. The NHL isn't really like that anymore. You can't take 10 to 15 years to build your team anymore, or else you're going to far too far behind. Toronto didn't even take that long to build. They got Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, and they pretty much said, okay, let's start filling them in with free agents. And I mean, they did it wrong too because they overpaid everybody. But so when we'll look at Buffalo, look at Edmonton. You could even throw Edmonton in there because, I mean, at least Edmonton's making the playoffs, but Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs in 13 years. Look at Ottawa. Ottawa had all these high draft picks, and our rebuild's over, and they're going to go back to square one probably in this offseason, right? Because they poached it, right? So what do you want? Do you want a team that's going to tank for 5 to 6, 7, 8 years and then complain that we've been shitty for 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years? Or do you want a team that's going to tank maybe 1 or 2 years and then go, okay, I'm just going to go by what I think Ken Hughes is doing. I'm going to go out and get really good young players that may not be doing so well on this team, but have the potential to be better in a newer environment or with more minutes. Right? I mean, Doc was a gift because Chicago just wanted to get rid of salary. They were like, no, we're going to have to pay Doc too much money in the future. We're not ready to do that. Let's get rid of him. Newhook was a product of, we can't fit him into our top 6. You know what I mean? Where he probably should be.
And that was a team. Colorado was looking to get pieces that'll help them now, and they needed that cap space. Chicago wanted to suck even worse, so they got rid of him. So there were reasons behind it. And for Montreal, I agree. These are guys that could fit with the core group.
That's right. So they knew they had Suzuki. They knew we have our goal scorer. We have our two-way forward. So there's our 2/3 of our first line. Now Slavkovsky's come around, and when they drafted him, they were like, he's going to be our Josh Anderson on steroids, right? He's going to be the guy, and with that power move he did in Philly, he didn't score, but you're like, that's what Josh Anderson used to do all the time, although now he goes to a backhand and completely fucks it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Josh Anderson. That's a whole different episode. But so he's our guy now. You know what I mean? He's our power forward, but he's going to be our 70 to 80 point power forward, not our 25 goals, 40-point power forward. He's going to be our number one. He's going to be our,
Top line guy,
dare I say, Jean Leclerc power forward is what he's going to be.
possibly.
Right.
And then you look at their defense. How many defensemen do they have that you could say are guaranteed top four, or at least potential first pair? And you're looking at what, 7, 8, 9, 10 different prospects that could easily jump up into that top four.
Well, I mean, you have Gooley, Hudson, Reinbacher, and what's the other one that slips me? Gooley, Hudson, Reinbacher, and Mayu. That's your top four of the future right there.
And then you also have,
Then you have Harris. Then you have Struble. Then you have Jackeye. Then you have Barron. Then you have Engstrom. Then you have Kushyanakov or whatever his name is over in the KHL, who's one of the top defensemen of the KHL. You still have William Turgenev. You still have, William Trudeau. You still have, I'm not saying William Trudeau is going to be a top four, but you still have all these defensemen in your
easily
system.
in the third pair. Easily
in your third pair. So, I mean, you have Jackeye, who you can look at, this is going to be a good third pair guy. But now you're looking like, you know what? He could be a good fair second pair guy.
Could be a number four. He could be a number four.
Right? Like, wait a minute here. He is a much better David Savard, basically. Right? Jaden Struble. Man, last night against Philly, really showing his offensive side.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. He's really good defensively, too. He could be a four guy. Right? So, to me, if you have, I think Reinbacher was drafted to protect Hudson with offensive upside. So, because he's a righty,
drafted because he could do that, but he could also do everything else, like a Roman Josi.
Correct. So I make this comparison just because it goes to Montreal. It's your Subban Markov.
Yeah.
You have the two-way defenseman who can put points up, who can run a power play, but is very, very good defensively. And then you have your offensive defenseman who is okay defensively. He makes some good plays, but he's more offensively minded. I think Lane Hudson's going to be a better two-way defenseman than Subban, and that's not taken away from Subban. From what I've seen, Hudson really isn't that bad in his own end. He's just small. I mean, he's not as small now. He's 5'10" now. He's 5'10" now. So, but
yeah, maybe he'll be 5'14" by the time he makes it. But but I saw on Twitter just yesterday someone saying, "Oh, this Lane Hudson is garbage. He's your next Subban," and I'm reading this going, how is that an insult?
I mean, I was never happy with the way Subban played defense. Don't get me wrong. I didn't like Subban in his own end.
He's an NHL defenseman.
But it didn't matter. You didn't need Subban to be the best defenseman on the ice. That's why he had points. That's why he had Josh George, Alexei Emelin, and Andrei Markov always paired with him, because you didn't have to worry when they were there.
Exactly.
Right? Reinbacher, you don't have to worry if Hudson pitches in and all of a sudden it doesn't go his way. You don't have to worry because you have a pretty skilled defenseman back there. Same with Gooley and Mayu. You're going to pair, I think if they pair Gooley and Mayu up, you have Gooley, very good two-way defenseman that's responsible at both ends. And then you have who I think is going to be a tremendous offensive defenseman in Logan Mayu. I think Logan Mayu.
He could be.
I think Bergevin knew what he was picking. Maybe made the wrong year to pick him in the wrong situation. Probably cost him his job, but this guy, I mean, what he's doing in the AHL right now is he's breaking records. So now, will that go to the NHL? Will that play? We don't know. We don't know. Reinbacher had an okay year in Colton. Some say he had a very good year if you really look at the underlay numbers and really take the whole situation in consideration. He comes to the AHL and he just picks up. He really he's fitting right in. He's playing well for the team and he's doing everything he needs to do. You can tell he's going to be an NHL player. Logan Mayo, you can tell he's going to be an NHL player. Lane Hudson is probably going to come right to the NHL, although I won't be upset if Hudson and Reinbacher play next year in the AHL. So Montreal, I think Montreal has the makings of their best defense they've had since the 70s, personally.
Exactly. And I brought this up because of you hit the nail on the head with this. I brought up the fact of the defensemen and that sheer number of defensemen to show that they've been rebuilding this blue line for a while. And it's got all the pieces it needs. It just needs time. Now you're not
Yeah.
going to keep all those pieces. So you're not going to be able to draft all the forwards you need to draft anyway. And why would you want to? You want to start winning sooner rather than later, which means you have a ton of assets that you can trade to fill the gaps that are remaining. You're going to
Well, that's
draft
just
some
it.
good forwards anyway.
So say you're drafting sixth, or say you fall to seventh, or say someone wins the lottery and you fall to eighth,
Mm.
right? You're not going to, so you're sitting there and going, oh, we really want it down. And I think Montreal does like Demidov. I think they
Oh
do.
yeah,
Um, oh, we
they have
didn't
the
get
assets to
Demidov.
trade up now.
Oh, we didn't get Lindstrom. Oh, there's a chance we may not, or the guy we want might be gone at six. Hmm. I wonder if whatever team's in six, say it's Ottawa. Wonder what Ottawa would want if we give him our eighth pick, and what would they want out of that? They might come back and say, well, we want your eighth pick in Lane Hudson. And then Hughes will be like, nope, I'm not going that high on Lane Hudson. What other defenseman do you want? Give us Jordan Harris, or give us Justin Barron, or give us Jaden Struble, or Arbor Jacki. You know what I mean? Then you got to think about it. Then you got to think. I think the only people that aren't going to get moved, Caden Gooley, Lane Hudson, and David Reinbacher. I think everybody else is on the table. And I think Mayu would have to be unless you're getting a second or third overall pick, I don't think they're going to give up on Mayo that quick either. That might be, some people say, oh, I would never give, no one's going to offer that. I'm just saying, unless someone comes out and says, we'll give you Sarabini.
You notice that in all of this, we haven't even mentioned Mike Matheson. Like
I
he's still there. He is still
he
highly
he's still
valued.
there. He's still highly valued, but I would rather see what Lane Hudson's going to do at a professional level before
Yes.
I turf Mike Matheson.
But my point is, you're looking a few years down the line. Who's going to be the likely player traded? Lane Hudson or a Mike Matheson?
Oh, Mike
Clearly,
Matheson.
it's Mike
Mike Matheson could be traded by next year's trade deadline. If Lane
to a team that
Hudson,
wants to make the
if
playoffs
if
or move
Lane
up.
Hudson hits the NHL and he's the Lane Hudson of the NCAA, you have no
Yeah,
use for Mike Matheson. You
exactly.
have absolutely no use for Mike Matheson. And I know some people are pushing for Mike Matheson to be traded now. I'm not against that. I'm not against it. I really not,
Depending on what they
because I'm
get.
like, depending on what they get. But I'm one of those guys. I'd rather see what I have to replace him, because if I can't replace Mike Matheson, then I just lost a step. I just went back a step on my development of a
Also,
defenseman.
if you want someone to be able to replace him or do the things that he is doing now, who better to mentor that player than Mike
Then
Matheson?
Mike Matheson, and that's my hope. Yeah, it may make Lane Hudson play third pairing minutes or whatever, but I don't care. That I don't. In his first 2 years, I don't care. Like, I'm not looking for a Norris Trophy winner right out of the gate. But if you really look at the overall makeup of this team when healthy, especially with Joshua Waugh playing the way he did in the NHL, Lane Hudson with the possible going right into the NHL, the way Logan Mayhew's developing in the AHL, the way Slavkovsky has stepped up his game, there are only one or two players out of being a playoff team.
Well, you think about it, even just this year, Doc, Joshua Waugh, uh, Christian Dvorak, those three, that's an entire line right
Mm-hmm.
there. You can, or two centers and a top nine forward with what they have with New Hook and the way everyone else is playing. How much closer to the playoffs would they be? They'd be a lot fucking closer.
So imagine you have Nick next year, you go into the Suzuki, Caulfield, Softy, and say for some reason they go off the friggin' stanchions and pick Yakmachak or whatever his name is, or whatever, some defenseman
Yeah,
that
Remchuk, yeah.
Yeah, right. Say they pick him for some odd reason. Kent Hughes is like, you know what? I fucking love defensemen. I'm just picking defensemen. Every draft, every first round, I'm going with the defenseman. Don't give a shit. Put my sunglasses on and sit back with my hat tilted. And, you know,
No regrets.
no regrets. No regrets. And then, but then you have Newhook, Doc. I would say Waugh. I think Waugh would earn that spot at the start of the season, right?
Good, yeah.
Your third line's Dvorak, Anderson, and Gallagher. That's not a bad third line considering.
Expensive, but not bad.
Or it's and then you have Armia, Evans, and Pizzetta or whoever they put. You have your first two lines. You have two lines now, right? Because Newhook's proven he's going to be, exactly what they thought he was going to be. We all know Doc, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be exactly what he thought he was going to be. You have this top line where all three players have the potential to be 70 to 80 point scorers. And then you're going to have all this offense coming from the back end with your Hudsons and your Mathesons and your Ghoulies and your Jackeyes and your Mayus and your look, all this offense that's going to help build. Like, do you think it's a coincidence that we're getting all this offense from the defense and all of a sudden the offense of Montreal's offense is moving up, even though it's still shitty, right? But it's shitty because you lost Newhook for half the season. You lost Doc for all of this. You have one line. But that one line is dominating for the Montreal Canadiens in point wise. We haven't seen a line like this in in all honesty, because I was just looking back, we haven't seen a line like this since the Pacioretty Desharnais days when they were. And say what you want about Desharnais, he was the perfect center for Pacioretty.
Not to mention that line was on a team that did not make the playoffs, and it was a team that only had one line. So all the defenses keyed in on them, and they were still productive. Same as the line we're seeing right now, the Suzuki line right now. You put a second line out there with those guys, and that forces teams to kind of split their defensive coverage,
Yeah.
which opens up ice for both lines. That's the whole point of depth.
Yep. And that's what we've always argued about Montreal. They didn't have injuries piled up. Oh, we're sucking. We don't have the depth to fill in the injuries. We don't have it. But now we're getting it. Now, especially on defense. So on defense, now we get injuries. Like, oh, well, we'll just play this guy more. Oh, well, we'll just play this guy more. Oh, we'll bring this guy up from the AHL. And look at Struble. Oh, Struble, we're going to bring up from the AHL. You're probably not going to stay long. Yada, yada, yada. Whole shit. This guy's playing really well. Jackeye, we're going to send you down to work on stuff because he's playing really well. We know what you can do. We just want you to improve on this, this, and this. Roger out. He goes down. Another comes back up, and he's a totally different player.
And
a totally better player.
And what we're seeing now, the first couple of years of the rebuild, the team was completely decimated with injuries. Only Nick Suzuki played every single game in either of those years. This year, on defense, guys are missing games, yeah, but they're only missing 2-3 games at a time for minor injuries. Right. There's been some devastating injuries with Doc and Newhook, but you have Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky up front. I think Matheson as well on defense have played every single game this year.
So is Jacob.
And you have other guys who've been available almost every game this year anyway, as healthy scratches or whatever. So while the bad luck of injuries is still there, it's nowhere near what it was, which is improving the team on that.
Well, I'm looking at it now. They have 8 players that are going to play over 70 games. Gallagher, Anderson, Gooley, Evans, Slafkovsky, Matheson, Caulfield, and Suzuki. They're all going to. Gallagher has 67. So he had a 5-game suspension. So he would have played every game if he didn't have the suspension so far. Anderson and Gooley have played 68, and then the other top 5 have all played every game. Compare that to last year.
2 guys over 70.
You had 2 guys over 70, and only 1 guy played every game, Suzuki and Kovacevic. Anderson played 69. Way to go, buddy.
Nice. Very nice.
Nice.
And the year before that, you had 3 guys over 3 guys over 70 games. Suzuki, Romanov, and Evans.
And 2 right at.
Yeah.
And but you still had Huffman, Caulfield, Petrie, and Anderson 67, 68, 69. So you had 10 guys over 60. So you had 10 guys who the most they missed was 22 games. And then it just went
Yeah,
down from there.
that's a team. That's a team that year played it had 41 players on the fucking roster over that entire
Yeah.
season.
I mean, there's only
So
been
that tells you
33,
something.
and there's only been 33 this year, and last year there was 39. So
It's improving.
that played at least one game
Yeah,
with Montreal. But I mean, it's the devastation of the injuries this year. It's not so much the amount. It's Doc gone for a season,
yeah.
Newhook gone for pretty much half a season, Dvorak gone for almost the whole season. I mean, it looks like he may be back for the few games at the end here. He's skating around with a jersey, but why bring him back? What's the point? And then of course, look at the man games loft. You have to add 82 games in for Price, so
So you got
that
all
adds on to
these
it too.
guys who are going to be returning from injury for next season. Then you have whatever you pick up in the summer via draft. Maybe that kid makes the team. Likely not, but there's going to be a trade in there too.
Oh,
There will be.
I think so far at each draft he's made a trade for a young forward. Do we need a superstar? I'm never going to say no to a superstar elite type player.
But if he can score himself a first line player,
if he can score
I'm in.
himself a top six player, I'm in. I'm in. I mean, superstars aren't easy to get, but especially in Montreal, especially through free agency. But here's another thing about St. Louis. I'm going to go back to it. You
Yeah.
may get FAs wanting to come to Montreal to play for St. Louis, seeing what he's doing with all these other guys. So don't things. I think you're going to see a change in Montreal. I think you're going to see them being a playoff team by the 25-26. By a playoff team, I mean a team that should make the playoffs. I'm not saying they will make the playoffs by 25-26. And then that's when you sit there and go, okay, what do we need to make that next step?
Now you're looking at a team like St. Louis being there will likely make players want to come. Hughes is drafting players who can handle being in the Montreal market. I wrote about that in the Hockey Writers. And in 2 years' time, the Canadiens are going to have $49 million available, likely more closer to 20 just to sign one guy. And that year, you're going to have a few big name players who are available on the free agent market, looking for a payday, looking for a good place to play. They'll look at Montreal and say, that's a possibility. They have the money. They have a team that's on the rise. I like the atmosphere that's around them. They seem to have fun. Maybe I'll go there. So that's kind of where I think they're going with this, with the rebuild. Because drafting a superstar, I don't think is going to happen for them. Trading for one, I don't think is going to happen for them. I think what they're going to have to do is what the Rangers did with Panarin, and that's sign one.
But Panarin wanted to go to the Rangers too, so
he did, but they had to
but
sign him.
I see what you're saying. I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
caveat in because I know I'm going to hear that on Twitter.
true.
Oh, but the Panarin and Fox wanted the Rangers. They were handed to him.
Well, he wanted the Rangers, but he didn't want them to not pay him what he was going to get paid somewhere else either.
Right.
He was going to go somewhere else.
So I do believe you're going to see players that are going to get paid more than Suzuki and Caulfield in the near future. But Montreal got to be careful too because you have Gouli and Slavkovsky and a lot of these guys' contracts are coming up in the next couple of years, and they're going to need to fork out money for that. And I have no issue right now saying I have no issue Slavkovsky getting an $8 million contract on his next contract.
I mean, you can use Svechnikov as a comparable, and that would still keep him underneath Suzuki and Caulfield, but at the very least equal to them. And the number, the 49 million I quoted, is after they signed him to a contract like that, with the rises in the salary cap, and you'll have to sign other guys to fill the team, but you're going to have a good 15 to 20 million to sign one guy.
And I mean, and if they can somehow get rid of Price's contract, if they can somehow get rid of Anderson's or Gallagher's contract, then that's just more money for
Another
them.
12 million right there.
Yeah,
Gallagher and Anderson, that's 12 million.
I don't know if they can do that, but it's only after next season. They only got 2 or 3 years left on their contract anyway. So whatever, buy them out. Whatever.
The number I quoted still included them in the actual cap hit for the team. So they're in a really good place. And you can see how he's constructed a salary cap to be workable to help a team improve. That's a huge part of a rebuild that other teams, like you mentioned, Toronto, Buffalo, like they're all missing on the rebuild because they're lacking in one area. Whereas Hughes, it shows that he's actually planning for it. Whether he hits the mark or he screws up at any of them, that's still to be seen. But you can see his plan includes all those aspects.
Yeah, I mean, he's built a defensive core. Like I said, that could be one of the best defensive cores they had since the 70s.
Could be.
The goaltending depth now, with the way Montembeault and Primo have been playing, now that Allen's gone, Jacob Fowler, that Russian, that Volholkin guy over in Russia. Um, and we're not even talking about Dubish in the AHL, who completely turned his game around. Um, so, I mean, now you're looking at like, man, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goalies that all have starter NHL potential. What are we going to do here? Now, I don't think, personally, I don't think Montembeault and Primo are the goalies of the future.
Oh, but they're the goalies for now, and they're the goalies for the
They're,
next 3-4
they're goalies
years.
for now, but they're the goalies that are going to be there until, say, the Fowlers and the Dobish and the Volholkins are ready to.
Yeah.
I want to see how Volholkin does in the KHL before I really make a statement about him. But
And there's no rush to get him either. I
and
mean,
there's no rush to get him.
You look at that Philly Russian goalie. Forget his name.
Oh, it's all over Twitter right now. So it
Yeah.
should be.
Well, whatever his name is, comrade goaltender.
Oh,
They took what 8-9 years before he showed up.
Fedotov.
Yeah. So if it takes 8-9 years before Volkin shows up, that's fine. Whatever. No one's banking on goalies showing up within a year or two.
No, and goalies. I mean, unless you're Carey Price or uh, no, I don't want to say his name, but
Marc-Andre Fleury. You
Marc
have to
Andre
be the
Fleury or something like
yeah.
that. You're 25, 26 before you really start
Yeah.
getting not 22, 23, which they were when they first got into the NHL. But
Well, they were generational goaltenders. Like
correct,
that's
yeah,
what it takes now.
yeah, yeah. And really, goaltending in the NHL right now is at a low. It's hard for you to look around and pick one goalie where you're like, this guy's head and shoulders above the other guy, because you're kind of like, they're all kind of okay. Hellebuck maybe, Shesterkin
Yeah, I would
maybe.
say he's the leading candidate for top goalie.
Yeah, Shesterkin. But I'm just saying, like years, like back in our day, there was the Waz, the Brodeurs, and the Hassicks, and the Balfours,
You don't
right?
say. These youngins don't understand.
They don't understand. Back in our day, Mary Lemieux carried 7 guys down the ice on his back and scored a hat trick with one shot. The puck split in 3. But I'm just saying, like you had at least 4 or 5 goalies that you knew every year would be the guys. And then
Yeah.
for a while, you had your Price and your Lundqvists and your Marc Andre Fleury's. And now you're kind of like, okay, yeah, this guy's good this year. He's not so great next year. Or he wasn't so great the year before. You know what I mean? Like there's no right now, and I'm not saying these goalies won't be. Right now, to me, there's no goalie that shines out to me like he's the guy.
Well, the way the NHL is going now, it's more I want a goaltender that I can rely on who can play solid, not necessarily steal a series or a game, but you want a guy that keeps you in every single game. And you're going
He's
to
not going to
rely
lose a game.
on, yeah, you're going to rely on your forwards to score those goals for you so you can win because that's where you're putting most of your money anyway. So you
Yeah.
want your big investments to produce, especially in the playoffs, which some teams can't seem to get.
But then you have a team like Edmonton who does get the production in the playoffs, but their defense and goaltending is so lousy that it doesn't matter. And that's where those two teams are. That's what they have to improve. I think Edmonton did. I still think their goaltending sus. I think Toronto did. I still think their goaltending's kind of suspect, and I don't think they have the forward depth. But who knows? Who knows?
Exactly.
Who
Now,
knows? But Montreal is building a complete team. They're sitting there saying, okay, we have guys. We have our top 6, right? Now we have guys we can plug into our bottoms. Like now we have like Beck. He's going to be a great probably 3C. You know what I mean? We have let me look over here. Philip Massar and Sean Farrell that they're hoping could be top nine, but they're going to make really excellent bottom lines that can fill in that top nine. Like they have depth that they can go in there and say, okay, oh no, Doc's injured. That's okay. Beck can fill in for him. You don't have Christian Dvorak uh, 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 anchor in the second line.
And they've got all the pieces now coming up. You've got guys like you mentioned, Beck. I mean, they've got the depth players, they've got those depth pieces that they need a little bit of time to develop these guys. So they're going to be having filler in the meantime. So, like you mentioned, the timeline for this team to be really good is going to take a couple more years. And that's when the cap is available. That's when they're going to have um, and they've stockpiled assets, so they're going to be in a good position to make the trades they need to make to fill the holes and sign the players they want to sign. So we're yeah, uh sucking this year sucks. Winning a few games near the end of the year to drop down from like fifth to sixth is
It's not going to
not
matter.
that big a fucking deal.
It's not. I'm
It's
not
not the end of
sitting.
the world,
I'm not throwing my toaster in the tub over it.
especially when they're winning the games because the young guys on the team that you've drafted recently are performing.
But see, here's the thing. So the narrative is changing now to, oh, Cole Caulfield, Salvati, and Sugi are doing well, but they still lost. That's exactly what I want. Yeah,
Oh
but
yeah.
I want Montebo and Primo to do well. I want Gooley and Jackeye and Harrison Struble to do well. So if they all do well, you're going to win. That's just the way
Isn't
it
this
is,
exactly what they wanted the start of the year anyway?
right? Like I mean,
Uh,
the narrative at the start of the year was two goalies are stealing too many games. We got to trade all our goalies. What the kind of fucking stupid logic is that? Like,
I don't think it is
I'm
logic.
sorry, like just and people got to stop getting upset because the player they wanted wasn't drafted. Right? There is a reason people are. Every team has a draft list, and it's not going to look anything like yours because teams go best player available and drafting for need kind of are the same thing because teams draft the best player available based on the need they have for the team. Like, unless it's a can't miss best player available, unless it's a can't miss guy, you're like, well, I have to draft this guy because this is good. This guy's going to be a star, right? And
Yeah.
you already know this. But I mean,
And
like,
when we go to games, we go live, we talk to the scouts that are there. They're not looking at the players you think they're looking at,
no,
and they don't like the players you think they should like. There's reasons why they're looking elsewhere because they talk to the coaches, they talk to the parents, they talk to other people.
there's a reason Grant McKegg kind of knows who Montreal's going to draft before
He
everyone
talks to
knows
other
who Montreal's
scouts.
because he talks to other scouts. He talks to other, and they're like, oh, well, we don't like this guy because of this, or we really like this guy because of that. Uh, Yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? Whatever. He
The guy's
listens
not
to
a
them.
fit for us.
He's
That
not a
kind of
fit
shit.
for us. And people got to realize that. People got to realize when you're drafting a player, unless he's a special player, you're not just drafting him because, oh, well, he has the best offensive skill right now to pick, but you know what? He has the exact same skill as this guy who's already on our team.
Don't
Where is
draft
he
in a
going to fit
vacuum.
in? Where are we going to fit him in? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he can't play in our top six. So we're wasting him on our bottom six, right? And we're going to eventually end up trading him away. So, but we can draft this guy because he's going to end up in our top four defense. And we need a right-handed defenseman in our top four, and we need a guy that's going to complement this guy because we think this guy is going to be our star. You know what? To us, that's the best player available.
exactly.
That's how that works, and people don't understand that. They just look at a stat sheet and go, "Oh, well, this guy's the better player." Because I can guarantee you, none of these guys are going to games and watching them. They're watching highlights on YouTube, and then they're sitting there and they're going, "Oh, well, look how well this guy played." And then they'll claim they will, "Oh, I watched every game. I watched every game." No, you didn't. You did not watch every game. Nobody does.
No, you watched a couple of highlight reels and maybe you watched them on TV three,
Yeah.
four times. maybe.
No, nobody watches every game
No.
of every player. It just doesn't happen.
There's a reason
But
why this year my draft list is not existent because I've only really watched a handful of players, and they were the ones that I was asked to watch. So I'm not going to put a list together because I'm too busy doing my day job right now. So I can't
I'm,
go watch 15, 20 games.
I mean, I have a list that I do on my own that I think the way I would like the draft to go. It doesn't look like a lot of other guys, and it does look like some other guys, and it's just that's just how it is. But guaranteed at in Vegas, when those NHL GMs sit down, every one of their lists is going to look different than every other scouting list. It's just the way it is. Because when they
Yeah.
send scouts out to scout, they don't go, "You go out and find me the best player available." They go, "Okay, this is what our team needs, right? A, B, C, and D. This is the priority. Go scout. If you're going to go watch this game, watch for that in the players. And we like this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy on Oshawa. So go watch. You know what I mean? And then the scout's going to come back and say, forget about this guy. This guy has potential. This guy here checks all the boxes. That's how it works. That's how scouting works.
No, we don't make the rules. All right, so we don't have a lot of time left. We only have a couple of minutes, so we don't really have time for any final thoughts. But do you have a final dad joke
I don't have any dad jokes anymore.
or
My
thought of
new
the day?
calendar, my new calendar is history. It's history stuff.
Ooh,
The family got sick of me saying dad jokes. So on this day in 1974, farmers discovered the Terracotta Army, a collection of 3,000 terracotta soldiers from the 209 BCE and Shanxi, China. That happened today.
years ago.
Also, this day in 1974, the Philadelphia Flyers were on their way to winning the Stanley Cup.
Ooh.
Just throwing that out there.
All right. So for me, I just want to say thank you to everyone again for tuning in. Thank you for listening, interacting with us, sending the emails and the comments. We really do appreciate it. I'm unfortunately going to be gone for the next 7-ish months. I
No
might
one's
be on
going to
one more
miss you.
show.
I mean, we'll all miss you.
No, because Matt is going to come back. Where's Waldo is going to be found and brought back. And the two of you are going to put on amazing shows while I'm gone.
And on the third day, he rose. Actually, it was the second day, but I don't know why people still say third day. But anyway, whatever.
Matt took an extra day off. That's all. So again, I just want to thank everyone for listening. And remember, if you're talking about